it's actually happening. Day 6 of Vlogmas, and we are finally getting to some real sewing. I've been working on this 1940s suit dress in December, and I finally cut all my pattern pieces. I pressed them this morning, ready to go. Didn't really film that bit, mostly because my iron has stopped steaming, so it was a really long and tedious process. But they're here, ready to go, so let's get cracking. Why yes, I have gotten new glasses since the last time you saw me. Thanks for noticing. So if you've been around here for a little while, you know a little bit about my adapted working setup and the things that I do. I'm sorry if this is repetitive for you, but we've got quite a lot of new folks here on the channel, so I'm gonna go over it anyway. So when I iron, first of all, I always sit down just because standing up is hard. And I've recently acquired, well, not recently, but I have been using one of these wool pressing mats. They're very popular with quilters. So if you're looking for one, it's 100% wool pressing mat. Your best bet is probably a quilt shop to find one. I do also have, where is it? One of these, which is a miniature tabletop ironing board. I have a sleeve board as well, which I use for things of a narrow circumference. So if I'm ironing anything, this is what I use. I also have a little mini iron. I get lots of comments about this. There'll be a link in the description if you're interested. However, mine has stopped working. It's not steaming, basically. So it's probably just clogged up with limescale. I live in a very hard water area. So I'm gonna try and descale it, and maybe I'll take it apart and see if I can't get it working again. Because I do really recommend these. Firstly, because this handle, great, love it. Very easy to hold. But also, like, you never realize how heavy an iron is until you're sick. The prospect of picking one up and dropping it on your fingers suddenly becomes very scary. Naturally, this is not plugged in. What I will say though is if you are ordering one of these, they're made by Prim, a European company. If you're in the UK, make sure you check it's coming with a UK plug. So the other technique I practice, if you like, in terms of energy saving and efficiency when it comes to actually sewing is I do this, it's known as task batching, which is basically you group similar processes together and do them all at once for increased efficiency, less likelihood of making mistakes, forgetting what you're doing. But it does mean you have to do things a little bit out of order to the way that they are maybe suggesting it in the pattern instructions. So for example, rather than pin the darts, sew the darts, press the darts in the front, and then move on to the back, you pin all the darts everywhere, sew all the darts everywhere, press all the darts everywhere. So it can get a little bit confusing. So then what I tend to do is I have one of these notepads. It's a to-do list with its own little tick boxes. So I tend to write out my own order of operations. Then I tick them off as I go and sort of tally up. I'm going to write one of these for myself for today and then get started on, frankly, pinning the darts. Always the first step. So I reckon I can do all of these things, pin and sew all of these things before I have to get my iron and press them before I can move on to the next step. So for example, like, where's the front? Because I've got this dart in the side seam of the bodice, I need to sew and press this dart before I can sew up the side seam. I do as much as I can before I have to change operation. So this is sort of what I'm aiming to get done in this session of sewing. I think we're gonna go for about half an hour and then have a rest, and that will just be pinning and sewing, and then I'll probably have a rest and then get the iron out. So one of the things I got asked in the comments of my previous video was, what's the point of putting all these marks on? Why am I doing it, taking all the time to do it? The answer is, it's so that I can pin them incredibly accurately. So the way I pin, I do this precision pinning technique whereby I stick the pin in perpendicular, so at a right angle to the surface of the fabric. And then you see how on the wrong side, that pin has not come out on the sewing line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it through just one layer, and you can see that's where the mark was. So I'm going for that small circle exactly on the line, and then I can pinch it together. There we are. And my dart is going to be completely precise now. And the same again up here, and stick it through. Sometimes you're lucky and it comes out exactly on the other side on the line, but not always. There we are. And like, you know what I mean, if your darts are a bit off, it's not the end of the world, but sometimes you do have seams, or if you're making a particularly fitted garment, like a corset, for example, that millimeter precision is necessary to achieving a good fit. So, and like, you know, quite often, for me as well, I have to curve my dart. Yeah, when you've got a curved dart and it's less of a straight line and things become more awkward, or a princess seam, for example, you really need the sewing line chalked on to make sure that you're not stretching anything out or sewing it in the wrong place, what have you. So those are pinned in the back onto the fronts. I was going to pin it from the other side, and then I realised actually I want to sew it from this side because it'll be easiest under the sewing machine that way. So that's also something to bear in mind when pinning darts. And yeah, I like to have my pins perpendicular to the sewing line like this. You can also pin down the line, as it's known, like that. But I find that distorts the fabric more and is less precise. But you know, each their own. More than one way to skin a cat, as the saying goes. And somebody once asked me why don't I, when I stick the pin in like this on the sewing line, why don't I then just flip the pin down and pin it in place like that? And the reason I do that is because what happens then is it shifts, it sort of rolls like that, and you get it pinned in the wrong place. Put it in place and I sort of squeeze the pin with my fingers like that to make sure that the layers are definitely not shifting. Pin in, take that pin out. Lovely. So you may remember from Wednesday's video that I marked on these lines because they're darts, but they're so narrow, they're going to be very difficult to mark. Now, I have remembered what these are, thankfully. So what I'm going to do is basically just fold along them like that, put a pin in at both ends, and then there. Okay, so that's how minuscule the tuck is. Great. Right, so this is going to be interesting because the pins, the length of the pins, are probably going to prevent me from folding that nicely. So when I sew these, I'll have to be very careful about the order that I sew them in so that I don't get weird things happening. Same again for the other side. There we are, sleeve number 2, done. And now the skirt seams being so long, this is where I have to make sure I get my right sides and everything. I also have to decide, maybe I should read the instructions, that might help, where the opening is supposed to be, because I believe it closes with a zip, but I find, as I have such a large hip curve, if I put a zip in a skirt side seam, it often sits weirdly. It might be better to put it in the centre back. Centre front. As I look at these 1/2 inch seam allowances, I'm like, that's not a lot. So do I want to leave the centre back open? I think I do. Knowing me and my shape, probably need 8-inch opening actually, so it's actually there. I put the 2 pins together so I know that's where I'm supposed to stop or start. Pick that one up from the Closet Historian. Excellent tip there, thanks Bianca. Sometimes I decide it's easier to not sew all the seams on a skirt at once because you sort of end up with a tube and it gets a bit awkward to put it under the machine, but I'm going to do it. What I am just realising though is I altered this very curvy bit. I didn't true up the pattern, did I? So I have no idea how the ease on this is going to work. Let's see how we go. See, this is a prime example of why you want to chalk on your sewing lines, because the edges here don't match. And so if I were to match my edges like that, my sewing lines are going to be really off. So I need to have the line chalked on so that I can exactly match, right, that's that to that. And if the seam allowances are a bit off, it's not the end of the world. You know, if they're not even, oh well. What I need is the sewing lines to match. So it looks like I'm having to ease the back into the front. So let's put the back on the top and pin it from this side. Do you see that ease there? And then, yeah, look at that again. Massively off. Should have balanced my pattern, but I didn't. Oh well. So here I am. What I'm starting with is I'm starting by matching the balance mark. And then the waistline. This is pretty much the same way you do any seam that you have to ease in. That's the point of the balance marks or the notches, is that you know those 2 points those are the constants, if you know what I mean. They always definitely have to match. And then this bit in between, you can sort of mush about a bit. And depending on how much I'm easing in, depends how I do it basically. I often sort of divide, find the halfway points and match those as well between the balance marks. This one, the ease isn't too bad, so it should just be fine to go from either end and wing it. But the fact I am having to ease this in suggests to me that this is not going to lie nicely when it's on my body, so we shall see. All right, that's everything pinned that I can pin. Oh, not the shoulder seams. Oh, but it's kind of difficult. I'm gonna leave the shoulder seams actually. Makes it easier to sew the darts. So yeah, now I'm going to get out my machine and set it up because that's heavy and tiring. And then I'm gonna have a rest. All of that took me about 25 minutes, half an hour maybe. And that was a bit slower because I had to keep moving the camera and all of that. So about 20 minutes work to do all that. And now I'm gonna have about a 15-minute rest probably because my arms will be aching after I pick up my sewing machine. Hi teams, there's been a little bit of a mishap. Turns out my microphone wasn't on for the rest of the time I was filming yesterday. So I've got lots of footage of me doing things, but no audio. So I think I'm gonna have to call this video here because I need more time to try and cobble something together out of the footage that I've got for the rest of the day. So that means there's gonna be a bonus video. So this one's just gonna be a little short video. We're up to the point, I've pinned everything and we're ready to sew, and we'll get to the actual sewing another day. Sorry about that. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.